Karens aren't just the annoying people you meet at the grocery store. Sometimes, they're people who refuse to listen to warning signs and place themselves and others in danger, simply out of arrogance and stupidity. Let's look at 5 such people who not only managed to earn the title of Karens, but also managed to make their names immortal on the internet, just by the sheer dumb ways in which they died. What was meant to be a daring leap into adrenaline-fueled thrill instead became a fatal lesson in physics, judgment, and the dangerous confidence of youth. On a quiet Saturday, 22-year-old Eric Barcia climbed onto a railroad trestle, intent on performing a homemade bungee jump, one that would ultimately cost him his life. The trestle stood roughly 70 feet above the ground, a height that would terrify most people. But for Barcia, fear wasn't the problem. Confidence was. Instead of seeking out a regulated bungee operation with trained professionals, safety harnesses, and tested equipment, he decided to create his own setup. The result was a patchwork system made from multiple bungee cords, thin, elastic ropes with hooks on either end, joined together using tape. Police later determined that Barcia had fastened one end of this improvised cord to his feet and secured the other end to the bridge itself. By all appearances, he believed he had done the math. The total length of the cords, when measured unstretched, came in just under the distance between the bridge and the ground. In his mind, this meant success. Jump, fall, rebound, simple. But there was one crucial detail he failed to fully account for: elasticity. Bungee cords are designed to stretch. That stretch is the very thing that creates the bounce, the rebound, the thrill. Unfortunately, it also means that a cord that appears short enough on paper can lengthen dramatically under the weight of a human body, traveling at speed. When Barcia stepped off the trestle, gravity did the rest. Instead of stopping mid-air, the cords stretched far beyond their initial length. There was no rebound, no dramatic snap upward. He struck the ground below with fatal force. Emergency responders arrived at the scene, but there was nothing they could do. Barcia was pronounced dead where he landed. The spot where he fell was not a designated recreational area, far from it. The trestle had posted warnings clearly stating that access was prohibited. Officials later emphasized that the bridge was never intended for pedestrians, let alone thrill-seekers attempting stunts. To those who knew him, the incident was almost impossible to reconcile with the person they remembered. Barcia was described by family members as intelligent and capable, someone who had done well in school and maintained steady employment. There was no history of recklessness that might have hinted at such a dangerous impulse. That contrast between who he was and how he died only deepened the shock. Investigators later reiterated the findings. The length of the assembled cords exceeded the safe distance between the trestle and the ground. Once stretch was factored in, it wasn't a mystery. It was a miscalculation, pure and simple. A fatal oversight rooted in the assumption that measuring length alone was enough to control risk. This was not the first time Barcia's name appeared in connection with this incident. In fact, police in Reston, Virginia, had previously released a statement confirming that a young man by the same name had died under similar circumstances. The details aligned: a 22-year-old, a bridge roughly 70 feet high, and a homemade bungee setup created outside of any professional oversight. What makes the story particularly haunting is how close it came to working, at least in Barcia's mind. He hadn't jumped blindly. He hadn't acted on a whim in the heat of the moment. He believed he had planned carefully. He measured. He secured the cords. He trusted his calculations. But confidence without expertise can be deadly. Bungee jumping is an activity that depends on precise engineering, specialized materials, and rigorous safety protocols. Commercial operators calculate not just distance, but weight, cord elasticity, environmental conditions, and margin for error. Barcia, armed only with tape, store-bought cords, and a ruler, attempted to replicate all of that on his own. In the end, the trestle stood unchanged. The warning signs remained. Life in the surrounding area continued. But one young man was gone, not because he lacked potential, but because he underestimated danger and overestimated his control over it. Barcia's death has since become a cautionary tale, one often cited in discussions about preventable accidents and so-called dumb ways to die. not because he was foolish by nature, but because the decision itself was fatally flawed. It serves as a grim reminder that danger doesn't always announce itself with chaos. Sometimes it arrives quietly, disguised as confidence, preparation, and the belief that nothing will go wrong. And sometimes the only mistake it takes is forgetting that bungee cords stretch. As Hurricane Ian tore through central Florida, authorities repeatedly warned residents to stay indoors, avoid floodwaters, and stop trying to fix things while a powerful storm was still raging. But in Deltona, one man ignored every common-sense warning and paid for it with his life. The 72-year-old man made the baffling decision to step outside in the middle of the night during the hurricane, not to seek safety or help, but to drain his swimming pool. While wind, rain, and flooding were intensifying, he chose property over personal safety, heading into conditions that emergency officials had made clear were dangerous and unpredictable. Sometime around 1 a.m., while Hurricane Ian continued dumping rain across the area, the man left his home on Poinciana Lane near Lake Bethel, armed with a flashlight and a hose. His plan, according to investigators, was to siphon water from his pool and direct it downhill into a nearby canal, an idea that ignored both basic storm safety and the obvious risks created by flooding. That canal, normally manageable under calm conditions, had swollen into a 30-foot wide hazard due to the storm. The embankment leading down to it had been transformed into a muddy slope, saturated by hours of relentless rain. The ground was unstable, slick, and unsafe, exactly the kind of place no one should have been standing during a hurricane, let alone in the dark. Predictably, things went wrong. When the man failed to return inside, his wife reported him missing. Deputies from the Volusia County Sheriff's Office responded to the home and began searching the property in dangerous conditions that no civilian should have been navigating to begin with. During the search, deputies found the man's flashlight near the canal, an ominous sign that confirmed what his decision had likely led to. Moments later, they spotted him unresponsive in the water behind the home. Several deputies pulled him from the canal and attempted to revive him, performing CPR until paramedics arrived. Despite their efforts, it was already too late. He was pronounced dead after being transported to the hospital. Investigators later confirmed what should have been obvious from the start. The man had been standing on a steep, rain-soaked slope while draining the pool. The embankment was extremely soft and slippery due to the hurricane, offering almost no traction. At some point, he lost his footing and fell into the canal, an entirely foreseeable outcome given the conditions. Once in the water, there was little chance of escape. Flooded canals during storms can carry stronger currents than they appear to, and combined with darkness and exhaustion, the situation quickly became fatal. This was not a freak accident. It was a textbook example of poor judgment. Hurricanes are not the time for outdoor chores, home maintenance, or last-minute damage control. Draining a pool during a storm doesn't protect a house. It puts a person directly in harm's way. Emergency officials stress year after year that floodwaters are among the most dangerous threats during hurricanes, yet people continue to underestimate them. In this case, the man ignored warnings, underestimated the conditions, and overestimated his ability to control a situation that was already far beyond safe limits. What may have seemed like a quick fix turned into a fatal mistake. The tragedy underscores how stubbornness and false confidence can be just as deadly as the storm itself. Rather than waiting until daylight or until conditions improved, the man chose to act during the worst possible moment. Outside, in the dark, during active flooding. Authorities later extended condolences to the family, but the underlying message was clear. This death was preventable. The hurricane didn't force him outside. No emergency required immediate action. He made the choice himself. In Deltona, this man lost his life not because of the storm alone, but because he ignored its danger. And in the end, draining a pool during a hurricane proved to be a disastrously stupid hill to die on. If Niagara Falls has taught the world anything, it's that nature does not negotiate. It does not care about intentions, causes, or personal confidence. And yet, every so often, someone comes along who believes the rules don't apply to them. One of the most infamous examples of this kind of stubborn, entitled recklessness is the story of Robert Overacker, a man who ignored warnings, dismissed safety concerns, and paid for it with his life. Overacker, a 39-year-old jet ski stunt performer from Camarillo, California, wasn't lacking skill or experience. He knew machines and understood speed and had performed stunts before. What he lacked was restraint. Like many classic Karen figures, he believed his mission made him special, important enough to override laws, logic, and common sense. He decided that Niagara Falls, one of the most powerful natural landmarks on Earth, would simply have to bend to his plan. His justification was noble on paper. Overacker claimed he wanted to bring attention to homelessness across the United States, but instead of choosing a safe, legal, or effective method, he opted for spectacle. He decided that hurling himself over a 180-foot waterfall on a jet ski, despite strict prohibitions, warnings, and decades of documented fatalities, was somehow a reasonable idea. Authorities at Niagara Falls have long made it clear: no stunts, no vessels, no exceptions. The falls are not a stage, but like a true Karen, Overacker didn't care. Rules were for other people. Warnings were just obstacles. He was convinced that preparation and confidence would protect him from reality. On October 1st, 1995, he put his plan into motion. Thousands of tourists gathered, unaware they were about to witness a preventable death. Overacker launched his green jet ski toward Horseshoe Falls, the largest and most dangerous section of Niagara. He wore bright gear meant to signal preparedness, a red suit, helmet, and life jacket, as if visibility could substitute for safety. He had engineered what he believed was his failsafe, a rocket-propelled parachute system designed to deploy after the fall and allow him to land safely. It was a homemade solution to a problem that never should have existed. Instead of respecting the raw force of the falls, Overacker tried to out-engineer it. As he sped forward, passing the point of no return, there was no turning back. Cameras rolled. The crowd watched. The jet ski launched into the mist, disappearing over the edge. And then, everything went wrong, exactly as experts would have predicted. The parachute system failed. It did not deploy properly. There was no second chance, no backup plan, no miraculous save. Overacker dropped straight down into the violently churning basin below, completely unprotected. The water at the base of Niagara Falls is not soft. It hits like concrete due to the immense force and turbulence. The impact killed him almost instantly. What spectators initially mistook for part of the stunt quickly turned into horror. The people who had come expecting a thrilling display instead watched a man's body pulled lifeless from the water by a tour boat only minutes later. His brother and friend, who had positioned themselves to document his triumph, were left to process the sudden reality that this was not bravery. It was fatal arrogance. Overacker became one of the few people in recorded history to die going over Niagara Falls intentionally. Not because he had to, not because of an accident, but because he refused to listen. His story is often framed as tragic, even heroic, because of his stated cause, but strip away the justification, and what remains is a classic Karen move. Ignoring rules, dismissing expert warnings, assuming personal ingenuity makes one immune to consequences, and dragging others into the fallout. Since his death, authorities have reinforced barriers, increased patrols, and doubled down on public messaging, hoping to prevent future self-inflicted tragedies. Overacker's stunt didn't advance his cause in any meaningful way, but it did become a permanent warning. His death wasn't mysterious. It wasn't unlucky. It wasn't heroic. It was dumb. And it stands as a brutal reminder that when entitlement meets unchecked confidence, even the loudest conviction can end in silence, drowned out by the endless roar of Niagara Falls. If there's one rule of the natural world that most people understand instinctively, it's this: wild animals are not props, pets, or photo opportunities. Unfortunately, every so often, someone decides that rule doesn't apply to them. In Belarus, one such moment of breathtaking arrogance ended in a way so absurd and preventable that it left even seasoned professionals stunned. The victim, a 60-year-old fisherman, died after being attacked by a beaver, an animal he chose to approach, grab, and pose with, despite every obvious warning sign that this was a terrible idea. His death wasn't the result of a freak accident or an unprovoked ambush. It was the consequence of entitlement meeting razor-sharp teeth. The incident occurred as the man and his friends were driving toward Shestakovskoy Lake, west of Minsk, for a fishing trip. Along the roadside, they spotted a beaver. Instead of doing what any sensible adult would do, admire it from a distance and keep moving, the fisherman stopped the car. What followed was a textbook Karen move. He decided the animal existed for his amusement. According to reports, the man attempted to grab the beaver so he could take a picture with it. No caution, no respect for the animal, no understanding that beavers are powerful wild rodents capable of inflicting serious injury. Just pure confidence that nothing bad would happen, because why would it? The beaver, unsurprisingly, disagreed. The animal reacted defensively, biting the man multiple times. One of those bites severed a major artery in his leg. Blood loss was rapid and severe. His friends, suddenly realizing that this fun moment had turned catastrophic, tried desperately to stop the bleeding, but it was too late. By the time they reached a nearby clinic, the man had already died. Medical staff were reportedly shocked by the nature of the injuries. This wasn't a small nip or a warning bite. It was a devastating wound caused by an animal equipped with teeth designed to cut through wood. A human leg never stood a chance. The irony is that this death didn't happen in isolation. Belarus has been experiencing an increase in encounters between humans and beavers for years. Once hunted nearly to extinction across Europe, beavers have made a strong comeback thanks to conservation efforts, hunting restrictions, and reintroduction programs. In Belarus alone, the population has surged to around 80,000, roughly triple what it was a decade ago. As their numbers have grown, beavers have expanded into areas closer to human activity, wandering near roads, homes, shops, and even schools. Emergency services have received multiple reports of aggressive encounters, often involving people who underestimated the animals or failed to leave them alone. Officials have even been dispatched to chase beavers away using fire hoses. In other words, the warnings were already there. Wildlife experts have explained that beavers, which can weigh up to 30 kilograms and stand nearly a meter tall, are especially unpredictable during certain seasons. In spring, younger beavers are pushed out of their family groups and forced to establish new territory, making them more aggressive and defensive. Because they are primarily nocturnal, encounters during daylight hours can leave them disoriented and frightened, conditions that increase the likelihood of an attack. None of that stopped this fisherman. Instead of recognizing the animal as potentially dangerous, he treated it like a roadside attraction. He ignored the fact that beavers are not docile, not domesticated, and not interested in selfies. His decision turned him into the only known person in Belarus to die as a direct result of a beaver attack, a distinction no one should ever want. The death has since been cited as a grim example of how human arrogance can collide fatally with wildlife. While officials have acknowledged that the growing beaver population is causing environmental and agricultural damage, they've also emphasized that these animals are not the problem. Human behavior is. The fisherman didn't die because beavers are suddenly monsters. He died because he refused to respect boundaries. He assumed control over a situation he clearly didn't understand. He treated a wild animal as though it were harmless entertainment, and paid for that assumption with his life. In the end, this wasn't a tragedy caused by bad luck. It was the inevitable outcome of a dumb choice. A moment of Karen-level entitlement. "I'll grab it, it'll be fine," was all it took. And so his story lives on as one of the most bizarre and avoidable deaths on record. A man who stopped on the side of the road, tried to manhandle a beaver for a photo, and discovered far too late that nature does not care about confidence, curiosity, or ego. Sometimes, the most dangerous addictions don't come in bottles labeled poison. Sometimes, they're marketed as healthy, wrapped in virtue, and swallowed with smug confidence. That was the fatal mistake made by Basil Brown. a 48-year-old British scientist whose unwavering belief in extreme health habits led him to a bizarre and entirely preventable death. Brown was deeply invested in the idea that more nutrients automatically meant better health. He wasn't satisfied with moderation or balance. Instead, he embraced an all-or-nothing mindset, convinced that flooding his body with vitamins would cleanse it, strengthen it, and elevate him above ordinary people who followed conventional medical advice. What he failed to grasp was that the human body has limits he bulldozed straight through. In the days leading up to his death, Brown embarked on what can only be described as a self-designed nutritional experiment. Over the course of just 10 days, he consumed staggering amounts of vitamin A, roughly 70 million units, alongside nearly a gallon of carrot juice every single day. To him, this wasn't reckless. It was dedication. Proof that he was serious about real health. His body, however, told a very different story. By the time Brown collapsed, his skin had turned a vivid yellow-orange, an alarming sign that his system was overwhelmed by carotene. What many consider a harmless pigment had saturated his tissues, signaling a toxic buildup that his liver could no longer process. When doctors later examined his body, the damage was unmistakable and shocking. The post-mortem revealed that Brown's liver had deteriorated in a way nearly identical to that of a long-term alcoholic. The irony was brutal. A man who prided himself on clean living had destroyed his liver as thoroughly as someone who drank themselves into oblivion. The cause wasn't alcohol, drugs, or disease. It was vitamins. Specifically, vitamin A toxicity so severe it shut his organs down. Medical experts explain that excessive vitamin A consumption can poison the body, attacking the liver and triggering catastrophic organ failure. In Brown's case, the effects mirrored acute alcohol poisoning, leading to cirrhosis and death. What made the situation even more tragic was how unnecessary it all was. This wasn't a mysterious illness or a rare condition. It was the direct result of ignoring basic biological reality. At the coroner's inquest, the conclusion was blunt and damning. Brown didn't die of natural causes or an unfortunate accident. He died because he couldn't stop. His obsession with health crossed into addiction, and that addiction killed him. The official ruling named the cause without euphemism: carrot juice addiction. Those who knew Brown described him as intelligent and passionate, someone who genuinely believed he was improving his life. But belief is not the same as truth, and confidence does not replace caution. In the end, Basil Brown wasn't undone by junk food, vice, or neglect. He was undone by arrogance disguised as discipline, by a refusal to believe that too much could apply to something as wholesome as carrots. His story remains one of the most absurd examples of how obsession, when left unchecked, can turn even the healthiest idea into a lethal one.